Hello and welcome back to Ravenstorm Studios, and today we will be talking about Threadneedle by Cari Thomas. Before we get into the book today, I'll try to keep it spoiler free, but there will be some minor spoilers, so if you don't want to hear about that, then obviously don't watch it. And there's also going to be very light mentions of sort of an abusive relationship. But I will try and keep the active descriptions less if I can. So let's get into part one, the plot. So this book is quite weird because it seems to want to be a very contemporary novel, and very much so more character driven, where less of the plot is about going and defeating one specific enemy, and more about how the characters interact with each other as people and personal growth, or not so much growth, perhaps even the opposite. And so, but towards the end, and I don't want to give too much spoilers, at least not at the beginning, but towards the end, it sort of ramps up a lot in plot-driven sort of style, and I actually don't like that. I usually read a lot more plot-driven ones. For example, I just before this book, I finished reading Brandon Sanderson's The Mistborn, which it's a really good book, but I'm having a little bit of trouble getting into the second one. I feel it's a bit exposition heavy for someone who's read the first one recently. But if you want me to do a more in-depth review of that, pop that down in the comments, and I'll think about that later. I'll think about doing that. And so back to the book at hand. Sorry, this isn't scripted, and I think I'll do more scripted videos in the future, but I read this a while ago, and it would be a bit hard to write it down. So we start off with the main character, whose name is Anna, and this is another thing I had a problem with. I thought that so there was an issue with the writing of the characters that I'll get into more later, but I don't think they were written very well for their age, and I think that happens a lot in media, but this specific instance was quite weird to me. But yeah, I'll get more into that in the sort of the negative aspects part. So she is an orphan. Both her parents have died. I won't say how they died, because that's actually kind of an important plot point. But she now lives with her aunt, who this is something I did like. So they never really had her called by her full name, which I actually can't remember. But the only character that I remember calling her by her full name was an old family friend who they had who they had had a falling out with, who is actually another sort of main character. But even the text, when it was not specifically Anna as the focus, always referred to her as aunt. And I really like that, because it helps set her apart from the other characters as someone who is not like it kind of. So you have all the characters over here who are not exactly good people because morality isn't always very cut and dry like that, especially in a book like this. But they are people who are very, very mixed in their morality, I would say. Whereas she is, from the beginning, a close character who is very horrible and very statedly horrible. Like, for example, one of the things... So she belongs to a coven of witches, and we're getting into spoiler territory here, but she belongs to a coven of witches called the Binders, and they are very interesting. I believe they, if I'm remembering correctly, if I'm not, I'm very sorry, but they came into existence during the sort of near the end of the medieval witch hunts because they thought that the problem was not, in fact, that people were prosecuting them for who they are, but the problem was that they were using the magic that was given to them, and that the magic itself was evil. And that's an interesting view. I would definitely very much disagree with that. I think it is the people who are actively seeking them out and trying to harm them because they are different, because they are something that other people do not understand. The people that are prosecuting them for that, they are actually the problem, in my opinion, but luckily they are very clearly portrayed, at least to the readers, as not the best characters. Though the main character does actually have some points in the story where she kind of turns back to them, because it's very interesting, because they are so clearly terrible, and yet they are all that she has ever had and all that she has ever known. So really, when the people that she comes to see as perfect and new and something else, when they do inevitably turn on her, as she has always kind of expected, then she is left with really nowhere else to turn, because the way they have conditioned her, she really does not have much self-esteem or self-confidence or really anything to believe in herself. So she can't even turn inwards when she is in a time of confusion, and that is a huge problem. So she does come back to them at some points, and I think that they do a good job of showing the author Cari Thomas does a wonderful job of showing how she feels about that and the confliction, and that was another good part of it. But so she's been brought up with this, I would call almost drowning your child to teach them a lesson. Well, not really drowning them. Like, there was this scene where Aunt was playing some music, and she had sort of enchanted it so that whenever Anna was stirred to emotion by this wonderful, beautiful music, it would be like the notes of the song were forcing their way down her throat and choking her, which is very not a nice thing to do. So, yeah, there was that. So I would, in fact, call this relationship quite abusive, and she always, oh, and there was also the poisoning her, like, all the time, every single day of her life, to constrict her magic. But, yeah, so I think what is interesting is she is one of those Aunt is one of those characters that they think they're doing the right thing, but they are so clearly not. And I think that's what you have to keep in mind when thinking of them. They are not, even the characters that are often, even the characters that are so clearly seem to be cut out as directly evil and only evil, sometimes they can believe that what they are doing is the right thing, and so to them they can be morally correct, even though what they are doing is not. And for people like that, I guess usually the best thing one could do would be to attempt to get them to see that what they're doing is wrong, but usually it's not gonna work. But then, so the real turning point at the beginning of the book is when Aunt's sister, no, sorry, an old family friend of Aunt, called Celine. Oh, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It looks like Celine. But she comes to celebrate the Anna's birthday, and I guess in tropes you would call Celine basically a vodka aunt, but she's not really actually related to them. But it does feel that way. And she brings along her daughter, Effie. Yeah, what a name. Who is very much the opposite of Anna in the beginning, at least. She kind of... So, Celine kind of embodies everything that Anna wants to be. The freedom, the beauty that it can be associated with magic, or at least that's how Anna sees her. And whereas her daughter, Effie, is seems to be the embodiment of when wielding that power and beauty can go wrong and go to one's head. So and Anna had never known about Effie before, really, but it's very interesting because it kind of throws a wrench in her. Well, not exactly, but kind of at the beginning. She's always wanted to run away with Celine and it just be them and be wild and free together, and all the things she could never have in her closed, zealous community. And so it turns out Effie's moving to Anna's school. Woo! And this is where the main part of the story is introduced. I'm gonna not go into as much detail as I have so far in this part, because honestly, not a lot plot-wise happens, and that's actually fine with me personally. And then I won't go into much detail in the next part, that is actually plot-heavy, because I don't want to do mega spoilers, you know. But this is the part that I was actually looking forward to, when I, came to read this book, because I had been reading a lot of plot-heavy works, and I was actually looking for something that was more character-driven, which this book was, I think, wanted to be, but so this part is mostly focused on on Anna and her school life, and how Effie comes in and disrupts that, and the kind of the dynamics that are going on in this school, and how they have to deal with bullies, and just like sort of everyday school life, but with magic. And there's also Anna really wishes that she could do all. She secretly wishes she could be doing everything Effie is doing, but also hates her for it, because she has never had that opportunity, and she has been brought up to think that everything she is doing is terrible, and yet also has wanted to be doing that for her whole life, because it is something other than the drudgery and monotony and horror of her everyday life in her closed-off community. Definitely not a reminder of any closed-off communities in the real world. Church. And so, she, no, that's not meant to be a dig at, any people of faith watching these videos. If you are, I'm sorry, but I do think this, story is meant to parallel, sort of a religious background with the Binders, in a way, but that's just my personal interpretation, and that's one of the things about these more character-driven and sort of contemporary in theme books, is that a lot of it, like, the interpretations are, well, up for interpretation, you know? Like, I'm writing a novel, so I could, like, say, the curtain over there was blue, and someone could be like, oh, that author is signaling their deep sadness with the blue curtains, and I could be like, nah fam, I just thought it would look cool, you know? Like, so there can be different interpretations based on different readers, and yeah, so it's not, but yeah, not much really happens plot-wise here. Anna learns to be a bit more loose, but and eventually it does all come sort of crashing down, and she's forced, well, she, in her mind at least, is forced to return to the emotionally unsafe and barely physically safe, but like the space that she has grown up in, that while not even really that much safer than the one she has found herself in, it is what she has known, and so she will go back there. and in the end, it does actually have some unexpected twists, which were interesting choices, but not for me personally. And again, I really did think it would be all character driven, but then in the end they did come in and swing that big hammer of plot, sort of, and make the ending very, very plot heavy. So basically, beginning, minor exposition for like 50 pages, and then like obviously not, this isn't exact, but like this is how it felt, and then character development for 400 pages, and then a whole lot of plot crammed into 10 pages. You know, like, realistically, it feels like, to me, and I am probably wrong about this, but it feels to me like the author could have written either a 10,000... No, sorry. God, that's a lot. Either, like, 1,000-word book. Sorry, 1,000-page book. Sorry. It feels like, to me, like, either the author could have written a 1,000-page book where they did focus the same amount on... Like they focused equally on plot and on... oh, you can't see my hands. Equally on plot and on and on character development. Or they could have written two separate 500-page books, one focusing on character development, one focusing on plot. But I guess, but then either their editor or publisher or something said, no, put these in one book, or no, don't make 1,000-word book, that it'll sell easier if you do a 500-page book. But again, I do not know what happened with the publishing. It could have been entirely their choice. And also, the thing I keep forgetting is that this is their first novel, so it's not guaranteed to be perfect. And also, that, like, that... Alright. Cut this. Part 2. The good stuff. So what I did find good about this book was when they did do character-driven stuff, I think they did it pretty well. And when they did plot stuff, I thought they did it okay, but they did cram it in too much. Also, I thought it was written pretty decently. Like, it's not my style. Like, it's not what I love to read, but I feel like it was part of their fact that this was the first book that they released, and I feel like they have a lot of room to grow. Also, as I mentioned, I like the way they portrayed the relationship between Anna and Aunt. How when she came upon hard times, she did, in her mind, think that she had to come back to her aunt because that was the only place that she had known, and once all of her stable relationships that she had built over time seemed to crumble, it was the only building standing, even if that building was full of horrors. So yeah. And I think they did. There's probably a lot more good stuff that I'm not mentioning here, just because I haven't read the book in 2 weeks. But part 3, the not so great stuff. Now, I mentioned the writing style. and I said it was pretty okay, but I don't think it was amazing. And again, first book, but yeah. And then there was the pacing. The pacing was a bit weird because it went kind of okay at the beginning, slowed down towards the middle, and then was really, 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 really fast towards the end. So like basically all of the plot happened in the last 50 to 100 pages. And that was another thing. The characters' ages are not well written. Like, so as a human going through high school right now, I did not find these authentically written high schoolers. Now, I know they're 16. They're, like, a little older than me, but still, they felt like they were written personality-wise like 12-year-olds or 10-year-olds. But then at the same time, they were really horny. And that was really weird for me. I did not like that. Okay, because like they were written, and I know this is a problem with a lot of adult authors when trying to write children. Don't seem to do it very well. They seem to like write whatever the age is of the child, and then dumb it down a few years. You know, they seem to equate children with stupid. Now that's not always the case. There are a lot of good, well-written children. Again, I point to Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn. Not sponsored. But that was a good book. I believe the main character was 16, which I do find it a little problematic that they're in a relationship with a 21-year-old when they're 21 when they're 17. But anyway, that's quite problematic, but that's for another video. But I do think for a 16-year-old, I think they're quite well written. Not amazingly, but quite well. And basically, the best way to write a child, in my opinion, is to treat them like a short adult, basically. Because they're like, in intelligence wise, I feel like past like, anyway, children are generally badly written, but these ones especially so, because in summary they were dumbed down, but they were also super obsessed with sex. Like, there wasn't an actual sex scene in this one, but it got quite close, and I was uncomfortable with that. But that's pretty much it. So in conclusion, would I read another book by the same author? Yes. Would I buy another book by the same author? No. If it's available in the library, I'd read it, or maybe listen to the audiobook. Because I found like, generally if something's not super well written, writing style wise, it's actually a lot better in an audiobook form, because the voice actors can change the way it's written. Like, for example, Lemony Snicket books. Like, I haven't read Series of Unfortunate Events yet. I think it'll be great. But I've listened to the audiobooks of some of his other books. All the Wrong Question series, the first 3, the 4th. And the voice actor for that one really brings it out. But I got a hold of a borrowed copy from a school library about God, 3 years ago now. And I read it, and I did not like the writing. Like, sorry to Lemony Snicket, but I personally am someone who uses a lot of commas. My opinion is if the same idea runs through the sentence, put a comma instead of a full stop, basically. I am drowning in a sea of commas. But Lemony Snicket, at least in those books, take How Much I Love Commas and then replace that with full stops. And that's how he writes. And I don't like it. I'm sorry. But yeah, I feel like if they wrote a second one and it was on audiobook for free, I would listen to it. Or even the book for free. Would I recommend this book? Probably not. I would give it a 3.5 out of 5 star rating, and I just don't think it was all that great. Like, I can see the concept, and I can see the idea, and I can see where they were going, and I really, really like the concept. I like the concept a lot more than I like the actual final product. And I thought the concept was really great. But the book, not so much. So, yeah. Read it if you want to. I've tried not to spoil it too much. That's all. Bye.